Avi Melamed is a former Israeli intelligence official and author of the new book, Inside the Middle East. He joins us today on Israel's border with southern Lebanon to break down the Hezbollah threat to Israel and the West.
Avi, this is such a beautiful landscape. We were commenting before we started the interview here, but what is Hezbollah doing here in southern Lebanon? I guess where do we begin, right? This is Hezbollah's stronghold. This is Hezbollah country.
Yes, actually, and I think the good way to put it is to say that the Hezbollah, to a large extent, is serving the Iranian interest in this region. Actually, the Hezbollah became the most powerful and important proxy of the Iranian, and the one that was enhancing very much the Iranian expanding policy in the region. To the point, actually, to a large extent, the real boss in Lebanon is not the Lebanese government, it's rather the Iranian themselves.
I said this is Hezbollah Central. I should have said this is Tehran West, really, when you think about it. It has become an Iranian satellite state. And Avi, that's no coincidence, right? Because Iran has a bullseye on Israel, and what better way to get at Israel than to set up shop on Israel's northern border here in Lebanon?
Yes, Eric, this is a very accurate observation. Look, unfortunately, in the last generation, the Iranian regime was very skillfully able to execute a very well-structured plan to expand its influence in different parts of the Middle East. And the major card he was playing with was the whole issue of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Under this slogan, the Iranian regime was able actually to build himself a stronghold in different parts of the Middle East. This is one of the most important strongholds of the Iranians in the Middle East, in Lebanon, through the Hezbollah that was established by the Iranians in the beginning of the 80s. And today, as a fact, the very long, massive investments of the Iranians in the Hezbollah in Lebanon have been very well paid off. As far as the Iranians are concerned, they do have today a large influence of what's going on in Lebanon.
Yeah, and we were talking before the interview, you pointed out some of these buildings here, right in front of us on Israel's border. You're saying, you know what? Iranian money has paid for some of these buildings.
Correct.
You are an intelligence pro, Avi. You've been around the block and then some in the intelligence world. What kind of activities are going on right here?
Well, we have to remember the south part of Lebanon consists of something like, roughly speaking, 200 different villages, mostly rural areas. Most of the population in south part of Lebanon are Shiites. South part of Lebanon is the major stronghold of the Hezbollah, politically speaking, in addition to other places in Lebanon. South part of Lebanon, under Hezbollah's direct rule, sort of speaking, became, to a large extent, a one big, massive fortress military compound, sort of speaking, where villages, regular villages, in the end of the day became a very fortress and fortified military compound. We know that there are bunkers in private buildings. We know that there are huge networks of tunnels connecting
in homes.
We know
tunnels, unbelievable.
We know that the Israeli intelligence provided an open proof, sort of speaking, showing how people are storing in their home rockets and missiles and advanced weapons and so forth and so forth. So actually what we're looking here is something which is amazing, where a military organization guided by a very extreme ideology, the Hezbollah, is basically turning a civil infrastructure into one big, massive military infrastructure that is supposed to be activated in the time where the Hezbollah and the Iranians actually will decide to activate it.
It's a war machine here in southern Lebanon, a Hezbollah Iranian war machine, Avi, and we saw the bitter fruits of that back in 2006. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the Lebanon war, where Israel went at it with Hezbollah. It's surreal to me almost, Avi, because this is Israeli territory we're standing on right now, and literally right in front of us is Lebanon and Hezbollah territory. This was kind of a flashpoint in 2006 during that war, right? Towns like Metula, Kiryat Shimona, the town we're in right now here in Israel, these were heavily affected by those Hezbollah rockets and missiles, right? What kind of action did we see here in northern Israel?
Well, what happened during the war is that as an outcome of the indiscriminate shooting of thousands of rockets by the Hezbollah into massively populated towns and cities. By the way, Haifa, the area of Tel Aviv, also areas that are exposed to this threat, people actually have to run for shelters. And basically Israel has to build a whole methodology, a whole way of dealing with this enormous threat. Because if you try to think about it in the States, if you think about even a small state in the States that is being exposed to such a threat, and you have to basically secure millions of civilians in a reality where where rockets and missiles are pouring down on their homes and malls and schools and kindergartens, you can imagine what kind of an energy and resources it takes in order to be able to provide civilians the protection they have to be guaranteed with.
That 2006 war, Avi, lasted for weeks and weeks, and there were Israelis living in shelters for weeks and weeks. And folks, for an American audience, I want you to understand what this means. Picture what the scenario Avi is laying out, a very real scenario. We saw part of it in 2006. Hezbollah has rearmed in the decade since then. Imagine a terror group in Mexico or Canada on America's borders, armed to the teeth with tens of thousands of rockets and missiles pointed at every inch of the United States. What would we do? Well, Israel is facing that situation right now. These Hezbollah rockets, stationed just yards from where I'm standing right now, literally can hit every inch of the Jewish state. There's really no place to escape this, to run and hide. Israel has, through Iran, who supplies many of these rockets and missiles, Hezbollah has blanketed Israel. And by the way, as an American, why you should care about this, Hezbollah has killed more Americans, yes, Americans, than any terror group other than Al-Qaeda. Hezbollah is an avowed enemy not only of Israel, but of America as well. Key point to remember there.
Coming up, more with Avi Melamed, author of Inside the Middle East, from the Lebanon border, Hezbollah country. It's The Watchman, only with Christians United for Israel and only on TBN. Stick around.